aha o te wā, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ki ngā mana whenua, nei rā aku mihi ki a koutou, noki tuhana rei ki haere mai ki te whakanuia tēnei huhu ngā whakahirahira. Ane oku kaupapa mātua mō te maru mahuki, mahi tika, mahi tahi, mahi ake. Nō reira, ngā manaakitanga ki runga i a tātou katoa, tēnā koutou, uri noa te whare, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Good afternoon to you all and happy Māori Language Week. I want to thank at the outset the 2Ans executive for kindly inviting me to speak today. If you are like me, then I'm sure you're a touch disappointed that we can't be in the same room. As Andrew said, I am beaming to you from Dunedin, and you are, of course, around the country. The recent COVID outbreak has yet again thrown a spanner in the works. I am optimistic on that front, though, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, especially as we continue to see the country's vaccination rate going up. And as a public service announcement, can I say that getting vaccinated is the best way to protect yourself and the ones that you love from COVID. And I do want to thank everyone here today on behalf of the New Zealand government and also as a fellow New Zealander for the bit that you are doing to keep COVID at bay. I'm confident that working together we will stamp out this virus again and come out stronger on the other side. On the flip side, it is perhaps slightly fitting that the symposium has to be conducted through the very technology that is its subject matter, and therefore I want to begin by reflecting on the rapid progress in telecommunications and information technology we've been lucky enough to witness. Around 100 years ago, the ability to teleconference in this way is something perhaps only science fiction writers, overly enthusiastic inventors or creative movie makers may have dreamed possible. Indeed, one of the legacies of the current COVID-19 pandemic may prove to be the increased speed with which teleconferencing has become important to everyday communication, the way we learn, do business, and access government services. As I say, COVID-19 has brought into sharp focus the importance of good digital technology and connectivity to our social and economic well-being. With New Zealand returning to another period of alert level lockdown, we've again relied on our telco networks as a means to stay connected while remaining in the safety of our bubbles. Our telco providers and network operators will be all too aware of the significant increase in traffic volumes on our fixed line and wireless networks during this time. We've seen new records set for traffic on our broadband networks, higher even than in previous lockdowns. The record was not just a single peak, it's indicative of a new higher level of traffic generally. It really goes to show how critical quality, resilient and trustworthy connections have become. As some of you will already be aware, a key priority for the digital economy and communications portfolio is the establishment of a digital strategy for Aotearoa. The aim of the proposed strategy is to create greater cohesion across the digital landscape and highlight how we can seize and maximise the digital opportunities while actively managing the inherent risks that come with increasing digitalisation. The strategy, as it's shaping up, has three interdependent themes. And the first of those is what I'm calling mahi tika, or trust, and it's absolutely critical if we want to lead in the digital space. I quite like the Māori term. It's got that sense of ongoing work, but trust gets us a long way there. We need to ensure, obviously, that we have the right foundations to sell our products and services to the world with confidence. And our trusted brand as a country is something I think we can build on. And we also want all New Zealanders to embrace the digital future because they feel safe and secure. That's an important part of the trust piece. And to fully embrace digital technology, people and businesses need to have confidence in how new technologies are created, used, and governed. The second pillar that's emerging in the digital strategy is around inclusion, or mahi tahi, that sense of working together. all New Zealanders have what they need to participate and contribute to and benefit from the digital world is the vision that goes with that. And we know that if we want to make the most of the opportunity, not only do we need all our workforce skilled and a bigger workforce, which goes to including the whole population, but also for social license to use technologies. We need to make sure that we have the right connectivity and that we have the right programs in place to support people into technologies. And the third pillar of the strategy is growth, or mahi ake, and that's about supporting the New Zealand digital technology sector to be fast growing and inclusive, and businesses to be quick to adopt technology that serves them. We know that there is a huge prize there in terms of increased productivity and in terms of being able to sell weightless products to the world that are of a high value and of course create high value jobs. But priorities and strategies aren't anything without action. So successive governments and private sector co-investment has together expanded and improved our telecommunications and information technology infrastructure. Both economic incentives and a desire to close the digital divide have been the driving forces of that investment. As Minister for the Digital Economy and Communications, it's important to me that we continue to build on and leverage our current investments in our telecommunications networks and infrastructure while working to address our connectivity gaps. Access to reliable and quality connectivity remains a challenge in our rural communities. I'm sure most of you will have heard of the Rural Broadband and Mobile Black Spot Fund initiatives. I'll touch on the progress of those and other programs shortly, but first let me say that the government wants to build further on the progress made under those programs so far. Use is already being made of the $15 million investment from the COVID-19 Relief Fund to expand capacity on congested wireless networks, but that's just the start. More than $46 million funded through the government's shovel-ready projects has been allocated to a rural capacity upgrade program to improve the performance of mobile towers in rural areas. And work will commence as soon as negotiations conclude with successful tenderers in that area. The government also remains committed to spending $60 million for further rural connectivity improvements as outlined in its 2020 election manifesto. Work within my portfolio on the future of connectivity will help guide the use of those funds and set the priorities and direction for future initiatives and government investment to improve connectivity in New Zealand as a whole. We need to be thinking and working smarter with a holistic view and an eye to the future and the opportunities that await our country. As I've said, that work will build on a good foundation of innovation and recent results. While the future is exciting, let's also remind ourselves of how far we've come. Our goal is to have 99.8% of the New Zealand population able to access better broadband by 2023, and that's a world-class objective. Good progress is being made to reach that goal. As an example, more than 85% of New Zealand's population in 309 towns and cities can now access broadband internet by way of fibre. We plan to reach 87% of the population by the end of 2022. Out of a target 84,000 rural households and businesses, more than 67,600 have been given access to better broadband in the last few years. That means nearly 300,000 rural households and businesses will have better internet access in 2023. Out of 877 eligible marae, the last update I had, I think was in April, more than 475 have been given broadband access. More are in the process of being connected. Out of a target 1,400 kilometres of state highway, over 877 kilometres have been given mobile phone coverage to a standard similar to 4G. And these achievements are the result of government and the private sector working together. While much has been achieved, I also acknowledge that there is still work to be done to ensure all New Zealanders are able to access the social and economic benefits that quality, reliable and resilient connectivity enables. And I do note the work that has today been released by the Commerce Commission, which happy to engage on when we come to questions. Technology, economic imperatives, and societal needs and expectations are rapidly evolving. Challenges remain, and I expect that other challenges will emerge, as we've seen with COVID-19. That's why it's important that we continue to build and set a strong foundation for our future together. While we work to ensure our telecommunications networks are robust to endure the increased demand for data, we also need to concurrently address barriers that many Kiwis face, like skills and the confidence to take up and use technology in a meaningful and beneficial way. While each person or organisation here will have their particular circumstances and challenges, one thing we all have in common is the opportunity to learn from each other. It's together that we can be stronger in overcoming the current challenges we face, and it will also be true into the future. So in closing, I would like to extend my thanks to you all and the organisations, communities and iwi that you represent for your ongoing engagement and collaboration with each other and with the government. As Minister, it's always encouraging to see the remarkable work that has been achieved when people have banded together for the benefit and greater good of our communities. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And I understand, I'm probably in your hands, Andrew, but that we've set aside some time for questions.
Kia ora, Minister. Correct, we have. Friends, I remind you all that if you would like to ask a question of the Minister, please do utilise the Q&A function inside Zoom so that I can see them, and then I can put them to the Minister on your behalf. Not all of them necessarily, but certainly some. I've got a couple coming through here now, Minister. I'll put them to you. Access to the internet is increasingly important to access government and social services. Many who need to access these services are the least able to afford Wi-Fi or mobile data. Has anyone considered some universal basic access which is funded by a levy?
Well, there is actually some work and thought going into how we can improve inclusion. It's part of the digital strategy work, but also we're looking at thinking about how we can facilitate or enable that process. I know, for example, the Enable Network has put a proposition to government about supplying internet to low-income households in the Christchurch area, which is currently being given some consideration, has been the subject of wider consultation with the industry. In terms of how we look wider to make internet affordable, that is certainly something I am looking at the moment. I'm not really in a position to say much more on that today, but it certainly is something I think we've got to acknowledge, that in this day and age, having connectivity is absolutely critical to participate fully in society. Having said that, we're also responding to and listening to the likes of the Citizens Advice Bureau, who are representing those who sometimes don't want to, but also sometimes just don't have the skills or the ability to connect. So there's going to be a very small group that will not want to be online, and we've also got to attend to their needs and concerns and desire to continue being citizens whilst not having that connectivity or choosing to opt out of it.
I have another question for you, and I can see a few coming in here too. We'll do as many as we can. We have the Minister through until 22:02 at the latest. So if you want to get in, / if you want to ensure one's answered, then this is the tool that you use, my friends. The second question for you, Minister. We often hear stats on coverage and performance, such as 98% mobile network coverage, 87% of the UFB. Experience from rural users would indicate that these stats are grossly overestimated. How do we actually get real-world, accurate information on the state of broadband in rural areas?
It's a really good question, and today the Telecommunications Commissioner from the Commerce Commission has put out some work on the retail service quality work program they've got there. A consultation document that they're inviting feedback on. I confess I've only had it for less than an hour, and in preparing for this event, wasn't able to read it all thoroughly, but I have cast an eye over it, and it's pretty interesting stuff. They've surveyed widely, got a good sense of where the pain points are for consumers of services, and wanting to develop some quality standards to incentivize the industry to get good measures, and then incentivize the industry to improve in those areas. I think it's going to be an incredibly important piece of work, and would encourage people to engage with it. These things, until you actually have that level of quality research, become anecdote or remain anecdote. But having performance indicators, I know some of the stuff that they've been doing already in monitoring performance has shed more light on what they know, and it comes out of the legislative change in 2018. They now have more levers and the ability to ensure high quality, and I think we've seen in the last couple of years some significant improvements in quality. But I also think it's appropriate that they are able to monitor it, and that consumers are able to compare products, get good information on what products are out there and how they're performing, so that consumers of connectivity services can legitimately compare, contrast, and make informed choices about what they are purchasing.
Wonderful. Now, I can see a couple of people asking in the chat about a copy of this document that you're referring to there, Minister. I'm going to pop a link to that document in our chat here, actually, friends. It come out from the Commerce Commission today. So give me a couple of minutes there, and we'll put it in the chat there so that you can see what we're talking about. A third question, Minister, if we may. This one is from Paul. Rural broadband is largely going to be a wireless service, be it from fixed wireless access or satellite providers. In order to enable that, when will the government release more details on the 5G spectrum?
So the 5G spectrum allocation process is tracking as we had anticipated. We have signalled that there'll be an auction, I think, towards the end of the first quarter next year, from memory. And then we expect the spectrum to be in place November next year. So that's a process that's working through. There's conversation with Māori interests to see if we can't work out how to address them in a more enduring way than we have in the past, because we want some certainty for Māori, but also for business, so that those spectrum rights can be allocated, and we can get on with the business of improving our connectivity. There's obviously some spectrum out there that's been allocated early access for some firms which are accessing that, and we've seen some 5G services emerging in city centre areas. Of course, as a country, we want to see that spread more widely so that more people can benefit from that technology. And particularly, we're going to be interested to see how we can develop Internet of Things in our rural and provincial communities, because lots of the technologies and industries there are things that we will want to be leading on and sell to the world. And so that implies improved connectivity to advance those, to develop business cases for things like climate change, emissions reductions, for things like environmental monitoring, for all of those things which are going to be part of the story of selling our products overseas, and indeed are good for the planet too.
Next question is from someone looking for some hope here, Minister. And Simon asks, or states at first, that they live 2 hours drive from the centre of Auckland. They have no mobile coverage. The best they can get from current services is 5 megabits during the day and 2 megabits in the evening. No fibre, no prospect of fibre, no prospect of any copper network upgrade. The last time they were in touch with the RCG, they were told that there was no plans for any further mobile coverage. Is there likely to be something for those sorts of edge cases from this current government?
It's very, I mean, it's hard to speak to any individual case, obviously, but you know, we kind of agree with the proposition that there needs to be ongoing information and ongoing improvement in services. And that's why you've seen us invest in the RBI2 program, continue to roll out the Mobile Black Spot Fund, the Marae connectivity, and so on. So, you know, the idea that things would somehow have been completed, or that connectivity would have been finished before we took over as government, or even after our first term, is not something that I think anybody entertains. Successive governments have recognised that ongoing investment is required, and you can look back to obviously the fibre backbone of our country now, which I get reports tells us that our speeds are in the top 3, in the Western world. That was not the case when that rollout started. We were at the bottom of the OECD. So successive governments' investment are improving things, but that job will never be finished. And we're also seeing new technologies come on stream, the likes of satellite technologies, which have the potential to be circuit breakers for some in some circumstances. And so I've commissioned some work actually as Minister on the future of connectivity. I want the government to have a better view of what's coming. Of course, the future is always uncertain, and the market will be the market. But actually, I think government has a responsibility to keep its view updated on where technologies are going and what the best pathway is for investment, especially where government is often co-investing in these solutions.
I think we might have time for 2 more, though it depends on just how meaty the particular questions are. So this is the last call for questions, attendees. There is also a vote things up function, and I'm just going to go, I told you this would be a democracy, but it is now a popularity contest. I'm going to pick the current top one and then the top one after it. If you want to have a say, that's your way. Minister, how does the ministry hear the voices and issues of rural, it's just changed around on me. How does the ministry hear the voice and issues of rural communities as it develops its plans? Does the ministry apply the rural proofing process developed by Labor previously?
Yes, that is something that my colleague, the Honourable Damien O'Connor, brings up frequently in our cabinet conversations and in collegial conversations. He's someone who's very committed to that policy. It's also true that the Prime Minister is very committed to seeing improved coverage in the rural area. I have heard her challenge some of the providers on meeting the things that they say they're going to do, and that's appropriate. It's in terms of taking that voice into account, I actually think the work program we've referenced and you've, I think, put in the chat function or are going to, Andrew, around the quality, the retail service quality indicators will be quite critical to that, because I think there is an organisation in the Commerce Commission that actually has the analytical muscle, the leverage and the tools to get a good sense of where things are working and where they're not, and to make recommendations and guide industry to providing better solutions. So again, to encourage people to engage with that work, because I think it's going to be a really productive piece of work for looking at where the gaps still exist and how best to address them.
Do you have time for one more, Minister?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. This one feels a little tricky to me. Linda asks that they're checking in from the West Coast region, where over 3,500 people are cut off from connection today. Resilience of infrastructure needs to be encompassed in the work with some level, in the mahi, with some level of urgency. Do you think of that, Minister?
Absolutely agree. It is something that I have myself been pursuing. I think we've had a number of events recently where there hasn't always been interruption of infrastructure, but I've been aware of it, being vulnerable. And I think as a country, we have to think carefully about the resilience of our networks. In the case of the West Coast, there is a government-funded alternate fibre link that is currently being put in place. Now, as best I'm aware, that's not completed until next year. So some of this work is already progressing, is one of the comments I'd make. In the case of the West Coast, I've asked for information on this today because it's certainly something that's interrupting people's lives. They've got flooding there as well. It's not an easy time. There are still 1,500 copper connections there, which I understand are up and running. But we do need to have that resilience piece in place, and there is an expectation on Chorus and others that if they are removing, when the wind back of copper comes, that there are emergency service contact alternate arrangements made for vulnerable consumers and so on. So that is being mapped out, but it's something that I think needs continued attention, because as a long stringy country, it's always been one of our challenges is the resilience of our networks, and it requires an ongoing attention, I think, particularly as we see the increasing importance in our day-to-day lives of connectivity. And there are very few things in a global pandemic which have become clearer as to how we are able to work, communicate, be educated, be in business, and so on from home. So that connectivity piece, which was already incredibly important, has risen to the top in the minds of those for whom it wasn't.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, attendees, but it's now my turn to be the bad guy here and say that the Minister has extended the time that he has available for us today. Thank you for the questions that you have asked. I'm going to have to leave those there. And Minister, thank you very much, both for answering those questions and for your time today to address us.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it, and all the best for the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Minister.